Love in the 21st century has reached its height of complexity and confusion.
The average woman doesn't really want just a good man. She doesn't want a husband. What she's really wanting are these standards or ideas that she has of what a man is supposed to be.
I created a long list of all the things that I wanted in my future husband.
Heather bought me her list of requirements, so let's check them out. He must be between 30 and 45.
You know, women in their list, they don't realize you're talking about like not even 1% of the male population.
Pretty much the man you described as a 1% man. You're hoping that you'll find one that's going to meet these requirements, which quite frankly is slim to none.
The average guy, just your average guy, is not 80% of those things.
The body of evidence is there. Average women don't want average men. As a matter of fact, they want a man that's above average. Because guess what? If I'm broke, short, ugly, girls don't date me.
Exactly.
So the market dictates my value.
Could you ever be attracted to someone that you'd see as average?
I probably wouldn't be.
Usually no.
No.
There's nothing amazing about them, is there?
I don't think they really want to date.
Everyone wants better than average, I guess.
No. He needs to be better than average. I don't do average.
You get what you think you deserve in this world.
I honestly want a six-figure guy.
I'm just gonna go ahead and shoot it straight with like at least 100K.
Around 6 figures, yeah.
Like 100,000.
100K.
100, 150.
I said over 200K. But my answer has changed. My lifestyle requires a little bit more than that.
300?
Okay,
That's enough to take care of me and what I got going on.
Okay.
I would say about 400, 500,000.
I need you to make $500,000. I would say at least like 500,000.
500, maybe like 1.1.
I want a billionaire.
So you're on Instagram and you're looking at people's lifestyles, comparing yourself and saying, why can't I have that? I want that I see other people having. I deserve that. I'm just as pretty as that.
Man, you're average looking at best. Most people get average people, especially average people.
So in her mind, she deserves this certain caliber of a man, but those men don't really want them. You're talking about a man who's a 10 plus, right? Top shelf dude.
The women are all chasing a small percentage of men, and a lot of women are not willing to settle. They're not. So you want a 1% man.
I'm also a 1% woman. So, I mean, I'm not going to settle until I get what I want.
You're not perfect. You got unresolved issues and you got a temper and you're bossy and you're controlling and men don't even like to be around you long term.
Your value is determined by the caliber of man you can attract. You can't self-proclaim you're a 1% woman. The market dictates your value, not you. I'm gonna say that again because a lot of girls want to sit here and say, I'm a princess, I'm a 10.
I'm a goddess.
Rate yourself, 1 to 10.
10.
10.
10 for sure.
10. All the way through?
All the way.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm a 10.
Oh, 10.
10. No question. What about you?
A dime.
A dime?
11 out of 10.
I want to say a 10. 100.
100.
Because I'm a goddess.
The market dictates your value, not you.
That finding the right one is not just about meeting the right one. It's actually also about being the right one and choosing the right one. Do we have the right mindset and the right skill set to meet the right one when he or she comes along?
Already, I think the question I've actually got for Deborah is, what exactly do you bring to the table?
Are you joking?
Did I start?
That's rude. That is very rude. I don't, like, should he be asking me that? That's actually rude.
I don't know what I would bring to the table. This is me. You like it, you don't, let's find out. Let's figure it out together.
I am the table, and a man has to set it.
What do you bring to the table?
I am the table. What do I not bring to the table? And I'm the table, the cups, the bowls, the plates, the utensils. I am the table.
You're the table?
Period. Yes.
Period.
You don't bring shit to the table because you are the table and he has to set your ass.
And even if I didn't bring anything to the table, I'm still high value. I can bring dirt to the table and there's still a line of men waiting outside the door just to talk to me. And I can offer jack shit.
Good evening. If you found your way to this video, most likely you braved the storm of the current dating market. some of you with more success than others, and came here looking for answers. If you are a man, and most importantly, if you are an average man, you'll come to find out that the dating world is a rather challenging place to be. Let me leave with this. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being average. Most people out there, by definition, are average. Just to give you a couple of figures, according to census.gov, the average man in the US is making just shy of $40,000 each year. The CDC tells us that he is around 5'9" in height, and he has a BMI or body mass index of 26.6, which puts him well into the overweight category. So, let's try to run that again. Imagine a man, average face and attractiveness, 5'9", slightly to mildly overweight, and making little under $40,000 a year. That is the average Joe in the USA. That is most men, right smack down the middle of average. And yet, I have a nagging suspicion that tells me most modern day women, up and including average and even below average women, are recoiling, squirming at the thought of considering this average Joe as a potential dating prospect, dreading the idea of potentially having to settle for him. So, can it be explained? Allow me to start at the end, with the finishing statement and wrap-up to this video. Unless you are a man in the top 20% of attractiveness, and ideally much higher than that, most likely you really should reconsider wasting your time on dating apps. And I have the studies and social experiments to prove it. I'll justify my claim. No problem. Then again, there is an argument that would say something like this. Hey man, Tinder is shallow by definition. Attractiveness isn't the end-all be-all when it comes to securing and most importantly, maintaining a relationship. I know. Women use a whole array of variables to judge a man as worthy of their time, worthy of their effort, their investment, their bodies, worthy of their loyalty, their wombs, and their commitment. We can talk about height, charisma, how well established you are, social standing. There's even a recent term that has come to light in economically attractive. But to focus and guide ourselves, all we need to do is answer a very simple question. What do women want? I have been working on a video about this, so I should just give you a small preview.
Gentlemen, today we're sharing with you what women really want in a guy. Here's the challenge with women. They say they want one thing, but their actions speak otherwise. And needless to say, that can be confusing. Surprising her with her favorite flowers she told you about on your first date is just one way listening pays off.
What attracts women to men?
Funny and kind. That they are polite, they are nice, that they're gentlemen, basically. Okay.
So the question of the day is, you gotta finish the line. I hate guys that
are nice.
Females be loving that toxic shit. Like why?
Oh, I don't know, because nobody wants a guy who actually likes them. Like what the fuck?
They're a real man. Yeah, I like it when they're in touch with their emotions. A good sense of fashion. His smile and his confidence. I guess like the shyer ones. Shoulders. If they have like big shoulders. Yeah.
And what about money and success? Is that attractive to you?
For me, it's not that much important. For me, I think it's all about love.
Isn't everyone's dream just to get like taken care of?
Pretty boys. I was going to say money as well.
Like they don't have to be classically good looking. They can just have a vibe that's doable.
He has to be funny, tall, dark and handsome. Okay. And it's not a shallow thing.
I think every woman's dream is to be with someone that doesn't judge her. I think a girl that like can do anything that she wants freely and her man doesn't judge her, That's what everyone wants.
Kind, generous.
A sensitive soul, you know.
This was just a small preview, but I would argue that if there's any takeaway from this, is that you might not want to listen to women when they talk about the qualities they are looking for in a man. I go into this in much more detail in my video, but overwhelmingly, women will not tell you the truth. Most usually, they either lie to look good, shoot themselves in their own feet with astoundingly narrow criteria, or have consumed vast amounts of propaganda down to the point where they have a wild misunderstanding of their value in the market, or have absolutely no concept of the kind of things that would actually be good for them in a man. Things like strong moral values, no vices, ideally their same religion and political alignment, together with being in the same page about having children, relocating, and gender roles, for example. I would argue these are huge parts of whether a partner will work for you or not. And yet those are answers that are incredibly hard to come by. The dating criteria women use to select men is astoundingly telling of their mentality and what they are looking for in the market. But here's the point I'm trying to make. If you are a man with a problem and you're seeking help, solutions, understanding, ideally you want advice that will benefit you. When it comes to dating and relationships, women seem to be disproportionately giving advice that benefits them instead. Answers that help them get clout, acceptance in certain circles, praise, social standing, opportunities, attention, or digital likes, among other things. Their answers benefit them. They are highly dynamic. They are looking to benefit themselves, even at the cost of possibly hurting you with terrible advice and misinformation. You might want to be very careful about the people you decide to listen to and the media you decide to consume. This gentleman of the fitting name Worst Online Dater, or WOD for short, noticed something quite interesting when braving the storm which is OkCupid and Tinder. He noticed he wasn't receiving an overwhelming amount of attention, much less than expected when compared to the investment he was putting in the platforms. So he set up a very simple Tinder experiment: catfishing. He acquired a few pictures on the internet, pictures of a highly attractive man on one side, and then pictures of an unattractive man on the other. Now, he didn't show the pictures that he used. These pictures are some that I found on my own. Feel free to disagree with my taste. But what did mention going to Google and scrolling down a few pages to make it less obvious. I would have loved to get an idea of the exact people he was catfishing as, but all the information we get is about the unattractive man he chose to use. He was a bit chubby, but not hideous by any means. I guess we could call him plain or average looking, mildly overweight, like the everyman, average Joe we were talking about earlier. So, just for clarity, let's start calling these men in the experiment Chad and Joe from now on. The experiment was simple. He set up two completely separate Tinder accounts and then swiped yes on every woman on a 100-mile radius. We don't really know what kind of city he lived in to have an exact idea of the demographic or the sample size, but we can just assume it was rather significant. Now, in the study, what tells us that the average age of women on Tinder is 24. Let's start with Chad, 26 years of age, and he got a whopping 22.6 success rate and seemed to do very well across all age groups. He did particularly well in the 21 to 25 bracket, which is Tinder's main female demographic, as we mentioned. which is to say that the primary Tinder user base seemed to find these men attractive. Now, if you've never tried online dating, you may be thinking, 22% success rate? That's a little over 1 in 5 women matching with him. Is it really that good? Well, you need to consider the sheer volume of the women he's trying to contact. It can become a pretty sizable number really quick. But just to put it in context, I've dared to try and surf the web looking for some pickup artist or PUA websites, the so-called masters of seduction. The point of this was to try and get a good idea about what the success rate seems to be in what they call cold approaching. Well, I've managed to find a few confessionals. Keymaster the Hurricane mentions that 1 in 10, meaning 10%, is a very good ratio, and that he himself, in his best days, used to pull 1 in 7 girls, meaning closer to a 14% success ratio. That for a person who is new to the game, the success rate could very well be 1 in 100, meaning 1%, or even much lower than that. Even an aspiring pickup artist mentions being shocked that the success ratio of a master of the craft wasn't closer to 50%. In this other article on Read the Theory, Avery, yet another master of the craft, tells us that on a good night he has a 10% success rate. On an average night, it's closer to 5. In the subreddit Seduction, we can see user PUA Curveball saying that the best in the world have a 6% success rate when backed by data, but some claim 11. And of course, you have a few others with awful spelling that boast about a whopping 50% success rate, so take it with a grain of salt. It's the internet. People lie. However, most sites I've been in agree that somewhere around the 5 to 10% success rate is appropriate for a master of seduction, that cold approaching is a numbers game, and that aspiring PUAs, or pickup artists, can expect a strikingly low success rate with a high chance of rejection and being called creepy early on. They all seem to agree on that front. Also, an important detail here. Assuming that you succeeded in approaching the woman and got yourself a phone number, that doesn't necessarily mean it will materialize into a date. Now, this makes attractive guys' astounding 22.6 match rate that much more impressive. No strings attached, little to no investment, swiping right on every single thing with legs and a pulse from the comfort of his own couch without having to worry about getting cancelled, yelled at, or ridiculed. We know that the attractive 26-year-old would do well on the market, to the shock and surprise of no one. But what about the remarkably average man? What about Joe? Well, his match rate ended up being 0.5%, or 1 in 200, which puts him around the same success rate as a fledgling pickup artist. Understandably, he's a bit out of the demographic. Remember, the average age of the female Tinder user is 24. So it could be that Joe is a bit too old for them. Maybe that can explain it. Let's try and challenge that. Walt flipped the experiment and tried again, scrambling their ages. So, Chad is now 34 years old and Joe is now younger at 24. Here are the results. And Chad takes the trophy again with an astounding 42% success ratio. 42%. This was pretty stunning for Walt, who expected the numbers to fall quite a bit. He expected Chad to get less matches since he was moving away from the 24-year-old girl demographic, which is prevalent on Tinder. Now, you could try and explain it by saying that Chad got a whole new demographic, the 30-plus-year-old women, who had set their search parameters to 30 at the bare minimum. That could be it. You could also make the argument that Chad, now being older, there was a certain expectation of, wealth, maturity, being better established as a man, all of which could be highly appealing for a woman. Whatever the case, he was overwhelmingly popular. Compared to him, Joe, now a 26-year-old man, sat at a very lukewarm 0.4% success rate. It seems that him being closer to the Tinder demographic didn't help him at all. If you check the numbers, older Chad, now at 34 years old, lost only 3.7% of the matches he had as younger Chad when you consider exclusively his matches with women under 27. They now stand at a very respectable 18.9%. Here are the final numbers, if anyone is interested. I know it seems bad, especially if you don't look like a male model, but the good news is, if you do look like a male model, there's a lot you can get away with. This is the one olive branch that I'll extend. There's been a series of experiments done, most notably one from a person called German Lifter on a bodybuilding forum. I quote, "Men poses as a hunky model on Tinder." You see where this is going. This man catfished as a popular model in a social experiment. He wanted to see just how different his match percentage would be as the handsome man. We do have the exact pictures he was using in this case. Here's a few of the messages that were exchanged. For any of you who have used Tinder before, I want you to take a look at the amount of effort he's using to secure a phone number with heavy sexual energy and a promise of fun times to come. There is a whole lot of them, so I handpicked the ones in which he put the least effort while getting the most results. So now you may be thinking, this is highly unscientific. After all, we don't have fixed numbers and percentages here. How can I possibly know what his success rate was without the numbers? Also, you're failing to show the girls who turned him down. And to that I'd say that the specific numbers are something I do not have for this particular experiment. But what we do have is German Lifter's confessional attached, where he says, and I quote, "I wasn't even trying, just sending random BS that came off the top of my head." He says that all conversations had were in the span of just 2 hours, and that he couldn't keep up with the amount of matches he was getting. He follows, "I can literally say anything and still get their number. The girls often initiate first and respond immediately," though he admits getting turned down a few times when he was overly direct and used extremely poor spelling. The few girls that turned him down for a sexual opener were eager to go with him on coffee dates, and the very few who did turn him down were even apologetic about it. They claimed they were not looking for a hookup, but told him he wouldn't have any problem getting a match to have sex with. It's a bit sad that we don't have a match percentage here, but we could assume it's substantially high based on the amount of interest he was getting after the matching was done. Not to mention that the experiment was repeated on several occasions, usually with the same result. Here we have Jason with an exposed swastika tattoo, and Ray, convicted 4 times for the of a child. Same experiment, same results. Minimal effort from the guys, maximum engagement and sexual energy from the women. We will be circling back to these specimens later on a different video, to talk exclusively about the top 10% of men. For the moment, as I said, let me extend the olive branch and say that if you do look like this, you really should consider using the platform. Now, that being said, let me add an extra layer to this, if I can, just to put the final metaphorical nail in the coffin. Think about it this way. Matching on Tinder is not a guarantee of anything. It's not a guarantee of a reply, a date, and much less a hookup. A match could be just a bot, automatically matching with anyone, or a woman wanting you to add her on her Instagram to boost her numbers, or even demanding a Cash App donation before she gives you the privilege of speaking with her. It's something we all instinctively know, but it's much better to cement it with numbers. I've tried to find actual studies with large sample sizes to corroborate just how many matches turn into actual dates. But I could not find any. Most catfishing social experiments end at the matching stage, well, for obvious reasons. What I could find though were 3 instances of isolated studies. Maybe if we can mush them together we can get at least a shadow of an idea of how many Tinder matches turn into dates on average. The first one comes from a man called Braden Gerard, 22 years old, Tinder Gold, white, decently attractive man, 100-kilometer radius from his city of 1 million inhabitants in Canada. He filtered for ages 18 to 25. Specifics out of the way, these are the figures he got after 4 months and 16,561 swipes. In the figures, we can see he likes about 50% of the women he sees on average, which is very similar and slightly above the average a man would like. No problem there. And on the receiving end, he reports that after 4 months, he got 290 matches. That means 1.75% of his swipes ended up in matches. Nowhere near Chad, of course, but he's at least crawling up that 1% barrier that seems to exist for most men. Very respectable. So this is the final graphic. From 290 matches, 56 ended up in conversations. He got 11 numbers, and from then on, this materialized into 3 real-life dates. Just 3. This means that his conversion rate from match to date was a little over 1%. 1.03% to be exact. But it could be that he's just terrible at conversation. It could be. We have more figures though. This one right here comes from Reddit user Kyong Banja. It tracks only 28 days, so it's much less reliable. From 53 matches, he managed to set up 9 dates, out of which 4 girls actually showed up, which is a whopping 7.5 conversion rate from match to date. Once again, small sample size, but much better than the previous 1%. A more reliable study is this one that spans 1000 days on OkCupid. It was by Reddit user Meet Enigma. From 401 total messages to 44 conversations that turned into 4 dates. He had close to a 1% success rate, which was a much more realistic figure. So, what's my angle here? I mean, they are individual studies, but they help give you an idea that after the much coveted match, you need to convert said match into a date, which in turn needs to convert into a hookup. Tinder is a hookup app after all, and women wouldn't use it just for making friends, promoting their socials to get validation, or just because they're bored, right? Right? Okay, all of these variables are pretty hard to deal with, but let's just try to bring these numbers into the real world. Let's just try to cement it with an example. Assume that you manage to brave the waters of online dating as an average or slightly above average man, and, against all odds, you scored yourself a date. And let's assume that it's not a bot, of course. Is that a guarantee of anything? And I'm not just talking about sex. Let's think about it this way. Do you think most women out there are going into dates in good faith? Well, have you ever heard of the term foodie date?
There are people intentionally going on dating apps so that they will get taken out to restaurants where they will proceed to order expensive food and liquor, sneakily cheating your way into free meals. And then after the meal, they just peace out.
This is an article from The Atlantic in 2019. Miss Magali Trejo Martinez, a 22-year-old girl from Oregon, claims she routinely goes on dates where food, and only food, is her priority. Most importantly, she doesn't feel bad about it. She's not going to say no to a free dinner, even when she has absolutely no romantic interest in the guy. This phenomenon is most commonly known as foodie dates. Is it common amongst women on dating apps? Well, a study published in the journal Social, Psychological and Personality Science in 2019 tells us that it's much more common than we'd like to believe. It's a fascinating analysis and a great read, but the summary is that there is such a thing as Dark Triad characteristics in people. These are Machiavellianism, which is manipulation, callousness, the end justifies the means kind of mentality. You have psychopathy, which is difficulty believing that other people have emotions, whether positive or negative, lack of empathy, lack of remorse. And finally, narcissism, overly positive self-view, entitlement, the I am a queen, treat me like a princess mentality, the kind of mentality that leads them to say things like, I am the table. So, women who possess these three Dark Triad characteristics are much more likely to both engage in foodie calls and see them as acceptable. Now, foodie calls are badly seen by the majority of the women in the study. Overall, it does tilt towards being badly seen, as we can see here, which doesn't take away that there's a solid 33% of them, which is 1 in 3, that actively do it. And those ones are much more likely to see it in a positive light. The Dark Triad girls. Both studies covered a whopping 1,248 women. They discovered that there was high variance on the number of foodie calls each woman did, ranging from just 1 time to a maximum of 233 times. Altogether, they averaged a good 4 to 5 foodie dates each. And this would be the conclusions of the study itself. Feel free to pause it if you'd like. I went over it rather quickly, though this study helps me make a good point. Assuming you managed to defeat all odds and got yourself a date, and you think this is a guarantee of a hookup, think again. There's some wild Tinder date stories out there. Just for fun, let me offer a few examples. This user in Reddit says his Tinder date brought her sister along without consulting him first, and ended up making him pay for movie tickets for the 3 of them. What about this one? This girl was inviting guys from Tinder en masse to populate her birthday party. They all found out when they started chatting about how they knew the girl. Wait, you matched on Tinder with her? So did I! This tweet right here got pretty popular. A young man called Ben found out when checking a woman's phone that his number was registered as free food. What about this waitress? She scheduled 2 dates back to back. She didn't really care too much about it, she just made the switch on the spot. Later on in her blog, she would describe guy number 1 as dull and unattractive. What about this other one? The girl originally started dating the guy in some sort of dinner with schmucks kind of dare she had with her friends. These ones are fun. In this one, a woman concealed an extremely advanced pregnancy. When they were talking on Tinder, she never brought it up even once. What about this other one? This woman was 200 pounds bigger than her pictures. So she shows up to the restaurant earlier than the man, and before he arrives, orders 5 whole dishes. She eats them all, and ends up making him pay for the whole thing, claiming she didn't have any money. So this is a great one. This guy was invited to a party by a girl he met on Tinder, only that the party ended up being a gathering for a pyramid scheme, where they tried to recruit him for the organization. This one over here is a whole adventure. But what about this one? This nameless 19-year-old medical school student in New York City discovered a life hack. After a bit of back and forth flirting, she invited her Tinder dates into her house and of course asked them for takeout. She asked them to bring pizza so they could, eat together while getting frisky. Get this, before inviting them into the house, what she did is take the pizza from their hands and then proceed to slam the door in their faces. This is something she did often and repeatedly. It was something she was proud of. Due credit, her sister tries to talk her out of it, saying it could be dangerous. You don't know how this man will react. But she refuses to listen to reason, and more so, she told the rest of her friends about the life hack so they could start doing the same. It wouldn't be my fault if the man did something. No means no, and my body, my choice. These are the justifications she decided to use. Once again, if you remember the Dark Triad characteristics, this makes absolute and perfect sense from her point of view. Remember, 1. Machiavellianism, 2. Narcissism, and 3. Psychopathy. 1. It's all good as long as I get a free pizza. These men were incredibly easy to manipulate anyways. It's their fault for being dumb. 2. I am a queen, so I deserve this. You should count yourself lucky I even match with you at all. 3. My positive feelings at getting a free meal are much more important than your negative ones at getting finessed. Matter of fact, most likely, guys don't have feelings. Traditionally, there's no negative consequence for this kind of behavior in women. Rather, it's normalized, and while not positively seen as a whole, remember the graphic, it's something that's statistically significant at 33% of the population. 1 in 3 women partake in foodie dates, and the ones who do have absolutely no remorse in doing it or endorsing it. Again, there's no negative consequence in doing this, aside from a bit of stigma, maybe. You also need to think about this. The percentage of Dark Triad foodie daters is most likely much higher than 33% on Tinder, since the 2019 study selected women at random, and not exclusively women who were active on dating apps. It's very reasonable to assume that foodie daters gather and concentrate on Tinder for obvious reasons. But you may be thinking now, what about the men? Well, this behavior is not really exclusive to women. Gay men also do it, and some straight men. Most notably, this is the highest profile case I could find. Paul Gonzales, a 45-year-old man from California, took, and I quote, financial advantage of women he largely met on dating apps. He dined and dashed, and then stuck them with the check. He did this to, I quote, at least 10 women, and, if convicted, could spend up to 13 years in jail. These men faced charges of extortion and grand theft, misdemeanor and petty theft, 10 felonies overall, but some articles claim more. Here are some confessionals. Justice is served. He doesn't have to worry about any meals now, he's going to be getting 3 square meals a day. It was humiliating, said an alleged victim. I was frustrated, it just left me in a bad place. Here's a great confessional. Laura asks, what kind of monster would do something like this? She was so embarrassed. She mentions that she's happy he got caught. I don't want any other women to have to go through that. And she's right. What kind of monster would do something like this? Gonzales did end up going to jail for his crimes. 120 days of hard time, plus 3 years probation and a ban from dating apps to prevent him from doing this again. He also got banned from 5 restaurants and is subject to seizure of his electronic devices. Huh. In the previous Foodie date study, we saw that the 2 most Dark Triad of women, on both independent studies, reported 55 and 233 Foodie dates each. These men did 10. I'm starting to sense a bit of a double standard here. I don't think any man could go to the police and say, "Officer, I was on a date and you'll never guess. This woman expected me to pay for the whole meal. She just left and stuck me with a check." The audacity, can you believe it? Can we open a legal case on this one? She needs to see some prison time. How fast would you be laughed out of the police station? It's becoming more and more apparent to me that men and women come from completely different worlds regarding dating. Worlds that operate under extremely different rules and standards. Standards that seem to overwhelmingly favor women. With a small disclaimer about, women at the very bottom of the barrel and men who are exceedingly high value, either in resources or in attractiveness. We can all sense it at some level. But it's still a big claim to make, and I need to justify it. This would be the point of the video where I could see some criticism incoming. It will go something like this. Listen man, every single example you gave above is anecdotal. It's a one-off. It's nothing but Tinder horror stories. It happens, yes, understandably, but at what rate? It's possible that I could go on a date, this man would say, and get myself a happy ending in every way of the word. It's pretty intellectually dishonest to just point to foodie dates, carjackings, pyramid schemes and crack house adventures to paint every single date as a horror story. I myself am a master of seduction, and my date could easily end up in a hookup. As a matter of fact, it usually does. To this argument, I would say, well, congratulations first on your Master of Seduction title, and second, you are absolutely right. I have tried my best to come across figures and numbers that are representative of this last step. Assuming you got yourself a Tinder date as an average man, how many of those dates end in hookups? Or rather, how many of those dates end up being positive experiences leading to a second date? Or just good experiences overall, even if there isn't a second date and you don't see each other again? Maybe you got a good conversation out of it and you feel that your time was adequately invested? I could not find any studies of experiments about this whatsoever. It's way too specific. See, the problem with most studies about Tinder dates is that it's incredibly hard to filter for the average man. Because, as we saw in the figures above, Chad is usually the one dominating and going in the most dates. So if we are actually trying to filter for Joe, the numbers get muddied up and it's very difficult to be able to get any kind of clear information about him. What I could find were some stats and figures about how often a first date ends up in sex. It's the best we got. This pickup artist called Tony D claims that 75% of his first dates end up in sex. A very sizable figure, but he's immediately called out as a liar by the community for wanting to promote his website with a BS claim. Then we have polls, which are not really representative because they are talking about hypotheticals. Would you sleep with someone on the first date? It's opinion rather than fact. In this one, for example, they ask about whether or not people had ever slept with someone on the first date. But even if the answer is yes, it could just have been a one-off thing, just to try it, or because the partner was either incredibly attractive or incredibly charming, not really something representative of Joe. Another aspiring PUA artist tells us that his F-close rate is around the 25% mark. Then we have more polls, hypotheticals again, 7% of women on this one and then 3% on the next. So, we have a very wide range from carjackings, foodie dates, pyramid schemes, getting catfished stood up, to being an alleged master of seduction and F-closing 75% of the time. I would argue, personally, that the average man is not a master of seduction. We are going to have to do something I hate here. Assume a much higher number, just to be safe and intellectually consistent. My question is this: what percentage of Tinder dates that an average Joe goes to end up being pleasant experiences that justified his investment? Whether the evening ends in a hookup or not is irrelevant, as, in my assumption, you can still have a great time on a date that ends up leading nowhere. Let's just assume that we can. Let's assume, also, for a second, that the average Joe is a master of seduction, and go with the fabricated, unproven figure that 75% of his dates end amazingly. But, here's the thing, we also know that 33% of women on Tinder, at the bare minimum, are foodie daters. Remember that Tinder is a hotspot for foodie daters by definition, so the real number should be way over 33%. But it's fine, let's just use this number for now. In this hypothetical, assuming you could dodge the foodie daters, your chances at a positive outcome stand at 67%, assuming of course that every single date you have with a non-foodie dater is a smashing success, and not accounting for the overwhelming foodie dater representation on Tinder. Also, this number really doesn't take into account dates where there was no chemistry, where you just don't click, dates which fizzle out, clear red flags from second one, girls who obsessively check their phones, women who are married, doors slammed in your face after you brought in pizza, pyramid schemes, pregnant catfishing, carjacking, and the rest of the horror stories we talked about earlier. I am being as generous with this figure as I possibly can, astoundingly generous, because of the lack of solid information we have. But, since we don't have an actual number, let's assume that 67% of your dates end amazingly. We finally have an idea of the calculation that we need to do. Your chances of going from matching to having a great time on a date is about 0.0067%. Or, to translate that, your chances are about 1 in 14,924. This, remember, is an extremely generous estimate. The actual odds should be much worse than this. Now, I never really liked this way of looking at odds, the 1 in a million kind of phenomenon, because it would be very easy for me to make a flashy comparison like, listen, an average man is much more likely to be struck by lightning than of having a satisfying Tinder date. I mean, the numbers don't lie, the odds of that happening are much better, 1 in 12,000. But the reason I don't like looking at probability like this, it's because, first, it sounds extremely clickbaity, and also because it sets up a wrong image if the person listening is not too well versed in statistics. To put it in context, assume that I tell you that you have a 1 in a million chance of winning the lottery. It's really not, but let's just assume for now. 1 in a million chance, and you win. It's easy to make the mistake of thinking that if there's a city of 1 million inhabitants, and every single person there buys a single ticket, that somewhere in the city, someone is going to win. That is not how it works. And I could explain it with a random number generator. All you need to do to get a satisfying date is land right on lucky number 7. So go ahead and start swiping the night away. You will notice that on every single swipe, you are rolling the dice again. You are rolling a die with well over 13,000 sides and hoping it lands on number 7 every time. If you're an average Joe, there is a very narrow pool of women out there that will match with you, agree to go on a date with you, and who can actually give you a positive experience during that date. Well, listen, we could say that every single time you hit number 7, you find one of them. You might get lucky, you never know, and that is the idea. Remember Braden? Well, he rolled his own die well over 16,000 times in a time period of 4 months. And, to his credit, there is a chance that he landed on that lucky number 7 multiple times during his swiping. You could make the argument that the Tinder algorithm tries not to match you with women that have already rejected you. So the options slowly dim away, making it more likely that you'll find that special person easier and with slightly better odds. But the numbers are highly dynamic and they also recalculate every single time you do find that lucky number 7 and you can't materialize that into anything real. Maybe because you had that one spelling mistake, you jumped the gun too early to go for that coffee, that one joke or reference didn't land, maybe she was just swamped with messages of other guys and yours just got lost in the mix, or maybe she just received a much better offer than yours and, well, completely ignored you to go out with that person instead. It's a whole mess to calculate, but it's pretty clear to me that removing that incredibly valuable girl from the pool would make your odds that much worse when it comes to finding the next one. Listen, hitting that lucky number 7 means that you found the woman, but it doesn't guarantee at all the positive experience. Let me explain. If you told me, I bought the automatic swiper, so most likely I can just leave it swiping all through the night, I'm bound to hit number 7 eventually, right? Well, 2 small details here. The first one is that you can't keep on rolling numbers forever. How many potential matches you might have heavily depends on how densely populated your city is, and also how big the Tinder user base. There is a limited pool even in huge cities like NYC. You cannot endlessly swipe. That is not realistic unless you are willing to relocate and travel the second all Tinder dates in your area dry up. Almost like a nomad, jumping city to city trying to reset your pool of potential matches. And secondly, finding that lucky number 7 means that you did manage to find that one unicorn that might be able to give you the positive experience you are looking for. But until you get to the date, and even through the date, you still need to put a considerable amount of time, effort, and energy to make that happen. If it was just as easy as swiping, every man would be playing lottery trying to hunt for that lucky number 7, swiping our way through the night, hoping to hit it. In every way of the word, I guess. But that's not the case. You need to treat every single match as if it were a 7, because it might be. Which, in turn, implies heavy resource investment out of you, even for the matches that will never become dates, or the dates that will never be positive experiences. You are heavily investing your most valuable asset, your time, your effort, and your energy. Assuming you are the average Joe we were talking about, well over 99.99% of the time, you are not getting any return on investment. And this is without counting the negative experiences you might have and how incredibly generous I've been with the last figure. Again, it's a numbers game. That's something most people seem to agree on. I'm fairly confident that we can all agree it's looking pretty rough out there if you're an average guy. Which is why it's always so stunning to see what the view is like from the other side of the board. I'll try to end the video with this. This was a pretty famous stunt which was in the news, you might remember it. A woman named Natasha Aponte managed to con hundreds of men to appear at the same time and place for a date. Let me repeat that again. She organized hundreds of men to show up for a date with her. Once she got them all gathered at the same spot, she got on stage and, well, let's take a look.
As you may or may not know, my name is Natasha, and I have everyone here today to be on a date with me. Dating apps are very difficult, and I said maybe I can bring everyone here in person and see how that goes. So, do you have what it takes to win a date with me? So, we're gonna start the elimination. Half of you people here are in relationships, so those people should leave now. Anyone under 5'10", please leave as well. No beer bellies, no long beards, no bald guys, no khakis, or is any less than 6 inches, you know, you gotta go. You gotta go. Also, anyone named Jimmy. I don't enjoy the name Jimmy. Ready? Go! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Swipe right, swipe left. I like his shirt. Swiping left. Didn't we say 5'10" and above? 3, 2, 1, let's see.
So, she's filtering on political affiliation, men who wear khakis, penis length, and whether or not your name is Jimmy, followed by a live Tinder swiping session, push-up, and sprinting competition. But this comment of hers is just incredible. Please listen to this one.
This is what happens on a day-to-day basis on dating.
This is what happens in a day-to-day basis in dating. This is just a regular Tuesday to her. Well over 100 men and closer to 200 agreed to go on a date with you, and you managed to gather them all at the exact same time and place. Is this accurate for women? Is it just for all women? Just for the top tier of women? How does dating really look from the other side of the board? And here's where things really get interesting. There's a few great studies done about this. But sadly enough, this video is already long enough as it is. True to the name of my channel, I'm a bit sad I couldn't manage to get into the why things work the way they work, though I think there's great value in just showing the pure, unadulterated facts. With nothing more to say, I'd love to make a small disclaimer before ending the video. I am just a disembodied voice on the internet. I have plenty of opinions on me, but that was never really the purpose of this essay. I try not to deal on opinions, I deal in facts. And I'll show them to you, gladly. But what you do with this information is up to you. I want to make this very clear. I'm not saying give up on dating. I'm not here to plant any kind of ideas in your head. If anything, my message is one of awareness, of introspection, and self-improvement. I need you to be educated about the numbers and the facts. After that is accomplished, I need you to make excellent choices about your future and how you decide to invest your time. But those decisions need to come from you. Whatever conclusion you get from this video, it has to come from you.